and welcome to Castle Combe, the last round away from home at Brands Hatch for the Intermarque Silhouettes in 2022. We have 2 rounds at Brands Hatch to follow after this one, and the fight for the top positions overall are really starting to hot up. Overnight we had heavy rain, so slightly damp tracks going into race day at Castle Combe. Thankfully it was reasonably dry and blustery at Castle Combe to dry the track quickly. A closure on the M4 had meant that most of the drivers had arrived just in time for qualifying, which was slightly later than originally scheduled. We had a 15-minute session to determine who would start on pole position, and possibly it was to be expected that Ruben Taylor, who's been racing with the Castle Combe GTs this year, would be top of the times. He did a great job in his Peugeot 206, so he would be fastest in qualifying, but only 0.2 of a second ahead of Ian Hales, who was putting on a good show in his Vauxhall Tigra. Daniel Smith, always up the front, would start in 3rd position with a time half a second off Ruben Taylor's fastest. Daniel Hunn did a great job in his Ford Fiesta to be 4th place overall, followed by Mark Sear in 5th, another local to the track, so it was good to see him up in the top 5 in qualifying. Fabio Lafarelli was an invitational class car for this event. He only runs a 998cc motorbike engine in the back of his VW Corrado, so he was only invitational, but it was great to see him up there in 6th place in the times. Danny Smith would follow in 7th, followed by Colin Smith in 8th. Paul Knight would be the fastest senior runner in 9th place overall, followed by Mick Robertson, a 2nd place senior runner in 10th. Philip Young would be next, followed by Philip Blackford, Phil Spinks, John Price and John Stewart to confirm our 15 starters for the first race of the day. Race 1 saw a storming start by the number 33 of Daniel Smith, who snatched the initial lead, but Ruben Taylor would reassert himself on lap number 2. The lead battle was intensified as Hales and Sear would latch onto the back of them to make it a 4-way tussle at the front for the victory in race 1. On lap number 4, Daniel Smith regained the lead with an audacious move around the outside of Taylor, and Ruben tried his best to get past once more, but unfortunately for him he had to focus his attentions to Hales behind, who was starting to attack him. This was even with Ian struggling with a spongy brake pedal, but he didn't want to give up, and at the checker flag it would be a great result for the blue Mercedes. He had a 1.3 second lead over Ruben Taylor, who had just held off Hales. Sear had been there throughout the whole race, fortunately for him just missing out on a podium with 4th place. Next up would be the number 490 of Danny Smith as he held off a charging Knight. This would mean Paul won the senior class after a great drive round Castle Combe, not an easy track to learn. Younger kept consistent throughout the race and brought home a strong 7th position, with Blackford just behind with a very well earned 8th position. The number 88 Peugeot driver also received the Driver of the Race award. He has suffered a fair degree of misfortune this year, so it was great to see him have a strong race well inside the top 10. John Stewart drove a great race to take the runner-up spot in the senior class in 9th, and John Price would be 10th. Sadly, we had lost 5 drivers from this first race of the day. Colin Smith, Hunn, Spinks had punctures, Lufarelli had an engine belt break go, and also Robertson would retire with a leaky half shaft. So let's confirm those results for the first race of the day. It will be Daniel Smith taking the win and also the fastest lap. His fastest lap coming quite early in the race on lap number 4 of a 1:11.742. He would finish 1.373 ahead of Ruben Taylor on the road. The top 4 all having lap times within 0.2 of a second of each other, with Mark Sear in 4th position. Those fastest laps ranging from a 1:11.7 to a 1:11.9, so great to see it very close right at the front of this Intermarque field. Danny Smith would finish 5th place as mentioned. He would be 21 seconds down the road, with Paul Knight just behind him. Paul Knight putting on a great show. He was way ahead of the 2nd place senior runner, so a great result for him. In 7th position it would be Philip Young in his Mitsubishi Colt. His fastest lap would come quite early on lap number 5 of a 1:14.788. His fastest lap was very close to that of Philip Blackford in 8th position, who had done a 1:14.897. John Stewart would be in 9th position, and also John Price in 10th position in his Tigra 2. It was a shame to see both of the Volkswagens to retire. We also had 2 retirements from Vauxhall drivers, and the Ford Fiesta of Daniel Hunn unfortunately not making it to the finish, even though his fastest lap was on pace for a top 5, so that would have been good to see. Hopefully he'll be able to get out for race number 2. And our fastest laps, we've already mentioned Daniel Smith's 1:11, but we also had in the senior category Paul Knight's 1:12.896, and also in the invitation class Fabio Lifarelli unfortunately only making a couple of laps, but his best lap coming early on lap number 2 with a 1:16.506. It would be the local legend Chris Dawes who did the honours to select the grid for the second race draw. It would see number 6 pulled out of the bag, meaning 6th place finisher Paul Knight would assume pole position. At the start, Danny Smith braved it around the outside and had the lead going into Camp Corner. At the second chicane there was a kerfuffle as Knight and Taylor went missing. This left Danny Smith in the lead with Hales in second, with Mark Sear in third and the number 33 of Daniel Smith in 4th position. It would soon become a 4-car train once more as the guys towards the back of the invert would start chasing the leaders down. Colin Smith had a fantastic start to end up in 5th position, with Young in 6th. Another driver making up places was Lifarelli as he moved past into 6th position. He started at the back after DNFing in the first race of the day. Meanwhile, at the front, Hales had got past Danny Smith into the lead on lap number 2 and got his head down to start breaking away. Sear took until lap number 5 to find a way past the second placed Vauxhall Tigra, and then did his best to try and chase down the leader. A lap later, Daniel Smith would occupy 3rd, which meant that Sear had now his mirrors full of a blue Mercedes. On lap number 8, Daniel Smith appeared in 2nd position, but was now 4.5 seconds behind the leader Hales. Could he close down this massive gap? Well, if 2022 had showed you anything, it seemed that Smith could do anything, and he started to cut the gap to the leader. But he'd just run out of time and laps to take this victory in race number 2. It was a great job from Hales, who had made the overtakes decisively early on to get the lead and make his way up the road. Daniel Smith had put on a great performance to try and catch him down, but it wasn't quite enough. He would settle for 2nd position with Sear completing the podium. A great job from him. Danny Smith kept his father Colin at bay for 4th, which earned him the Driver of the Race award. Lifarelli took a 6th position, although he was battling with the senior class winner Spinks. Robertson also did a great job towards the end of the race, and he was starting to close down the gaps for those two as well. Blackford was close behind in 9th position, with another really enjoyable solid run for him around Castle Combe. He would complete the finishers as Price retired on lap number 6 and Young pulled off early on with grass filling his radiators. And our only non-starter for race number 2 was Danny Hunn, who sadly has a clutch failure on the way to the grid. Let's quickly go down the results then for the second race of the day. Ian Hales taking a superb win and also a pretty quick lap time with a 1:11.6. Daniel Smith finishing second with the fastest lap with a 1:11 flat. He started to close in but tailed off in the last couple of laps, possibly tyres going off. He would end up 4.7 seconds behind Hales. Mark Sear put in another stellar performance to finish 3rd, and Danny Smith, after a great opening lap, would keep pace and finish in 4th position, just ahead of his dad Colin Smith. Lifarelli put in a great performance early on to make up positions and would hold it to the end in 6th, with Phil Spinks the leading senior runner in 7th, closely followed by Mick Robertson in 8th. Philip Blackford would finish 9th, another great performance for him in his Peugeot 206, followed by John Stewart, 3rd position in the seniors, 10th place overall in his Mercedes SLK. The DNFs from this second race of the day would be John Price, Philip Young, Paul Knight and Ruben Taylor. A real shame for the latter two, who didn't even make it around for the first lap after an incident on the first lap. But a great job from both of them, had stellar pace in the first race and the whole weekend before it, so they can certainly walk away from the weekend with promising signs going into the final few rounds. Unfortunately, Daniel not making the start with a clutch issue before it even got to the grid. The fastest laps, Daniel Smith will be fastest overall with a 1:11's flat. Mick Robertson will be the fastest senior runner with a 1:13.9, and Fabio Lifarelli getting more laps in this time in his Volkswagen Corrado motorcycle engined car with a 1:14.4 as his fastest time. In all, a very exciting 2 races here at Castle Combe. A massive thank you to the Castle Combe Racing Club and everyone at the circuit for making it a very enjoyable trip and feeling very welcome. Hopefully we'll be back in 2023. It looked like all drivers involved really enjoyed the challenge of a new track and really enjoyed the fast nature of it, certainly providing some great action for the fans trackside. So to round off the season, it's now a back-to-back Brands Hatch. The next round for the Intermarque Silhouettes will be on the 23rd of October as part of the Formula Ford Festival. And if you're interested in TinTop and Super Saloon action, it will be at Snetterton this weekend in October. So be sure to come and support us at the race. Some really good action with the BRSCC out there at Snetterton, so lots to look forward to. Thank you very much for watching the video. Thank you to everyone that supplied content for this one, and we'll see you soon for the next round. Goodbye.